Haiti. I wanted to ask you first about this report that Philip Alston will be presenting tomorrow to the GA about the new approach. He's quite critical of it. He says there's not yet a promise of an apology or acceptance of responsibility. The regret and moral responsibility don't do it, and set a terrible, they say, this will be the ultimate ongoing travesty of justice. So I wanted to know, one, what the response of the Secretariat is to this critique. Two, why Mr. Alston's press release in this room that's set for tomorrow at 1 p.m. wasn't in the week ahead, and everything else is.
For some reason,
You're
I don't
unaware?
have it on my calendar. If he is booked for this room at 1 p.m., I'm sure somebody will bring me a note, but I don't have him on here.
What do you make
I
of the
think first of all, I think we're obviously all looking forward to his briefing in the third committee tomorrow. We will take a look at that. I think we're not going to engage in a tit for tat. Mr. Alston, as all special rapporteurs, play an important role in speaking out freely and independently. The Secretary General expressed his deep regret and his personal commitment when he was in Haiti at doing whatever he can for the UN system to help the people of Haiti deal with the cholera outbreak. Deputy Secretary General and others have outlined this two-track approach. The full details of it will be announced before the end of the Secretary General's term.
What I wanted to, I guess, you're saying that you don't want to prejudge it, but I've seen this interview by the Secretary General, or a response by him to Deutsche Welle.
Is that Margaret Thatcher? Yeah. And in Sherwin's phone. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Sounds like one of my old English teachers. Scared me there for a second. Go ahead, sorry.
Sure, I wanted to ask, I guess you're saying that not to prejudge, but one of the things that he's most critical of is the Secretary General's repeated insistence that he doesn't know who brought it. And just recently, I don't know when this answer was given, but published, I think, today by Deutsche Welle is a quote from Ban Ki-moon where he says, on Haiti, we should have done more irrespective of judicial immunity or who caused the epidemic. And Alston is saying that these comments are create an ongoing judicial travesty when it's entirely clear who caused it.
I think people are allowed to disagree. We appreciate Mr. Alston's work. The Secretary General has made his position clear. The legal position notwithstanding, he is focused until the end of his term on trying to get as much help to the people of Haiti to deal with the issue of cholera on the island.
And can I ask about another Ban Ki-moon
Sure.
quote? Okay, I wanted to ask you. It seems like on Friday he gave an interview to Reuters in which he said he said it was the first time he publicly said he's returning to South Korea in mid-January and exploring how he could help the country. I think you were there when he met publicly with the red legislatures and said the same thing. But I wanted to know, how do you view this interview? Is this him announcing? It's been portrayed as him saying, implying strongly he's running. What was first about the thing, and does he have any response to President
I
Park?
think you'd have to ask the journalists why they interpreted the way they did. I don't think the Secretary General has made no secret that he will return to Korea, and he will decide on whatever his next move is once he returns. There's really, you will have. That's not a question directed to me. I think it's a question directed to journalists.
What's his position
Yes,
on term limits?
Can you?
Matthew?
Sure. Well, it wasn't Sahara, but just to finish this South Korea question, does the Secretary General have any view on the announced plan by President Park Geun-hye to extend to 2 limits, to 2 terms?
It's not for the Secretary General to have an opinion on this plan.
Right, but he's commented on other.
You've asked me a question, I've answered it. Yes, Mr. Lee.
Some other questions, but I was, I guess, expecting something on Yemen. What's the status? People are reporting that the airstrikes have resumed or even picked up expiration. There's also some reports that the Saudi-led coalition was targeting what little agricultural land there is in the country, and there are really troubling pictures of starving people being brought down from mountains to clinics. So what exactly is the plan of the UN? What's their read on how the bombing has resumed? And
well,
where's
it's
it
clear
headed?
the bombing has resumed. I think the pause, although very short, gave respite to some Yemenis. It allowed us to start some humanitarian distribution, though some were blocked. Notably, some continue to be blocked in terms of entering Taiz. The special envoy is in Yemen. He, as you saw over the weekend, had asked for an extension, asked for renewed commitment to the pause, and he will continue. He will continue to advocate for that.
Does the Secretary General, who removed the Saudi-Red coalition from the Children in Armed Conflict Annex on Yemen, consider the intentional bombing of agricultural land to also be something relevant to his consideration before he leaves of putting them back on the list?
If there was intentional bombing of agricultural land, that would fall under the intentional targeting of civilian infrastructure, which is prohibited by international law.
In Burundi, as maybe you or he knows, there were among the many things happening there is some journalists were arrested reportedly while investigating mass graves. There was an American journalist, J.C. Steers, and a Burundian journalist, Gildas, and their driver. This has been gone out all over the world. There's actually a list that's emerged of enemies of the state put out by the CND-FCC. So what I wonder is, what if he's there and these things are taking place? How do these constructive meetings involve talking about journalists being arrested for trying to document?
We're very much aware of the arrests of the journalists, which is something that's very regrettable, to say the least. We understand that both the journalists and the driver, who was also arrested, have now been released. We are in touch with our colleagues at the Human Rights Office in Bujumbura and trying to look into the exact circumstances of what has happened. It is clear that there is a need for the media and the press to be able to operate freely in Burundi and every other place for that matter.
And what about the list that emerged? Are there any steps being taken by the UN to make sure that the UN itself doesn't target media that are listed on the list?
Well, the UN's not in the business of targeting media. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I wanted to ask you on Western Sahara or Morocco, since Mr. Ladsus went there. First, there are reports of, quote, police brutality in Laayoune on the eve of Mr. Ladsus' arrival. People protesting being abused by the police. It was also, I saw that I think at least one of Mr. Ladsus' announced meetings in Morocco did not in fact take place. Do you have a readout of the meeting? And what's the response by MINURSA, which apparently is at least still in Laayoune, to these reports?
I don't have an update on his travels, but I do expect one shortly. Thank you.